detail the information that we have so far. Of course, with the motives still unknown, we wait for any further updates from North America, and we'll bring you those here on NewsX World. But we move on now towards trade, and top US and Chinese officials have held over 5 hours of talks in Stockholm, seeking to extend a tariff truce by 3 months and avoid a new round of economic tensions. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and China's Vice Premier He Feng led the closed-door discussions, with talks expected to resume today. President Trump warned of major supply chain disruptions if no deal is reached by a deadline. Trump, who just sealed a separate deal with the EU, has also paused tech export curbs on China to keep dialogue open ahead of a possible meeting with Xi Jinping later this year. So far, the talks have focused on rare earth trade and lowering tariffs. Well, with us to discuss all of the ramifications of these latest talks, but a wider conversation around trade as well ahead of Trump's August the 1st deadline, Dr. Ajay Dua, a senior economist, joining us live on the programme today. Dr. Dua, thank you for your time. Let's first look at these discussions between China and the US. Of course, the world's top two economies, they were in a fierce trade war that saw triple-digit tariffs placed on either country. There was a truce, and they're looking to extend that. How important is that, not just for both countries involved, but also the wider global economic scale, that these two countries aren't warring on a trade front?
Thank you very much, Mr. Joshua. I'm happy to join the discussions. Yesterday was the initiation of the third round of Chinese and the American negotiators meeting. As you mentioned, Mr. Besson, that the trade secretary, the finance secretary of the U.S. is leading the delegation on behalf of the U.S., and the vice premier of China has been involved in it. Important as it is for two reasons. One, the volumes are large. The Chinese exports to the U.S. were last year almost $600 billion. The imports were a bit less, considerably less, at about $170 billion. The dependence of the U.S. upon China, consequently, is rather large. And it is across the industry spectrum. Some goods are merely labor-intensive, and which get classified as consumer goods, both consumables as well as durables. And some are high-tech, because China is no longer just a labor-intensive country and competitive only on that ground, because China has made huge strides in technology as well. Robotics, in particular, is a 22,000 industrial robots in use in 2023, was the largest in the world. And it showed that China was also feeling the pinch of one child per family enforced principle enforced for 2 decades. So I think it is, and in turn, China imports from the US, and China needs a whole lot of technology.
Yes,
It might have developed AI, robotics, blockchain, those kind of things. But besides that, China is dependent upon the US. For instance, in the civilian aircraft industry, it needs a lot of help from there. It needs a lot of help even in AI, because Chinese have been talking of global cooperation in AI, which reflects that they are not really the best, and they would like to have the Western world join them in it.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Dua, sorry to interject. I'm just conscious of how much time we have, and I want to now look at the wider global trade tensions with the US. Of course, this August 1st deadline, though it may be moved, as we've seen Trump do before with his tariff deadlines, there are a host of countries that are really seeking now to push a trade deal over the line. We've seen the EU scramble to get a deal done, the UK, Vietnam, Japan also agreeing to frameworks with the United States. For countries that don't get a deal done, what will be the impact on their economies?
I think the Chinese are likely to get an extension beyond August 12th. For them, it wasn't the August 1st, it was the 12th, but the way it was, the negotiations are going on and both sides need it. They realize it completely now. I don't think there is any doubt in the minds of the Americans as well that they do need to arrive at an understanding with China and that it is not going to be these retaliatory tariffs which had taken the tariff rates to 145% just a couple of months ago, that these have to be reasonable, that the world, that their own prosperity is dependent upon one another's trade with one another, and at the same time, the question you raised earlier, the global prosperity to a large extent, both in terms of availability of goods, inflation, as well as their own GDP rates of growth do depend upon these two countries getting along well and the supply chains not being choked.
Yes.
I think the agreement between them may not be arrived at because the Chinese have said that they don't like to be blackmailed. I think that's the message coming from there with deadlines. They're saying we will arrive at a deal, we need it, but it's going to take time with them.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dürr, for that insight. You will be staying with us later in the programme, but we do move on now as the United States has dismissed the